every year in the NFL draft, I'll identify a few guys that end up being my guys. And those are the guys that I see something, I see it. And sometimes that it is easily explained, sometimes it is not. But for me, deep down, when I see it, I know it. Now, some years in draft classes, there will be several guys like that. And I think of 2014 as a perfect example for me with guys like Khalil Mack, especially Aaron Donald, who, throughout the draft process was being mocked as a second to third round talent. And I had him as a top 5 player in the draft, and I had him as the number 2 defensive player in the draft behind Khalil Mack. Where a lot of people had Jadeveon Clowney. Number one, Jadeveon Clowney was only the number 3 defensive player on my board in that 2014 draft. I think of Odell Beckham Jr., who I referenced and said, if he works on his hands, he's going to be the best wide receiver in this draft class and won't be close. And, Odell Beckham Jr. is Odell Beckham Jr. But sometimes you see those guys and you just feel it, you sense it, you know it. And sometimes you're going out there and you're taking a risk, especially for me doing these videos, because either A, in 2 or 3 years, I'll be a genius, or in 2 or 3 years, I'll look like a moron. And it'll be there in perpetuity where everybody can come back and mock me or not. It's one thing to make comments on videos and on social media. It's another thing to actually do the videos and then keep them up and then be able to revisit them as time goes along. I can't hide. But in this draft class, one of my dudes, one of the guys that I'm willing to potentially fall on my sword for, is David Njoku, the tight end from the U. Now, it sometimes can be tricky because when you see a guy with really otherworldly athleticism and explosiveness for his position, it can be very hard to look at the rest of the package, look at the rest of the prospect, because you could fall so in love just with the size, quickness, speed, explosiveness, leaping ability combination that it masks over a lot of other areas of stink and deficiency. But when I watch Njoku, it is one part of him as a prospect, a big part of him as a prospect, but it is not the only part of him as a prospect. And I think the more that you watch him on film, the more that you take a chance to evaluate him, the more he really stands out to you on film. And you see where you've got this big time elite upside, easily the most upside of all the tight ends in this very good tight end class. And you can maybe start to understand why I have David Njoku, not O.J. Howard, as my number 1 tight end in the 2017 NFL Draft. When you look at him, he's 6'4", 245 pounds. What impressed me, though, is based off of his length and just the way he plays. He plays more like he's 6'6", 6'7", 265 pounds. So while I would like to see him add a little bit of muscle, I mean, the dude plays bigger than he is already. Imagine when he does get some man weight on him. He hits an NFL weight room. He makes a couple of babies. Trust me, that man weight is going to happen. So then he's going to start playing at 255, 260 pounds. It's going to come naturally, and it's probably not going to sap much, if anything, away from what is arguably his greatest trait, which is his quickness and his speed. He's got elite get off the line, elite explosiveness for his position. You could argue he'd have really, really good explosiveness as a wide receiver. That's how explosive this guy is. He has the ability to be a downfield home run type of threat every single time he's on the field. I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough. He comes into the league, in my mind, based off of what you see on film, and he'll instantly be either the fastest or the second fastest tight end in the National Football League. That's how much he has in terms of the quicks and the jets and the vertical speed. For a guy like him, though, when you look at that size, quickness, speed, explosiveness combination, and again, I guess we shouldn't be surprised by the explosiveness. You're talking about a kid that was a national champion high school high jumper. I think he cleared 7'1" as a high school senior. That's impressive stuff. That speaks to that explosiveness that, again, just leaps out to you on film. You'd be surprised how well-rounded he is in other areas, though. Like, I think he's underrated in terms of his route running. Like some of the other scouting reports I've read after I completed mine, just to kind of give a comparison or a side-by-side, I saw questions about his route running and that he needed to work on it. I thought he had a pretty decent route tree. For a guy with that type of explosive physical ability, he could get by without being a very good route runner, frankly, because who the fuck's going to stick him man on man? But he's a better route runner than he's given credit for. He's shown at times where he can be very, very sharp in and out of his breaks, which is in particular dangerous when you think about how quick, explosive, and fast this guy is. Now, obviously, he could work some on expanding his route tree, but I thought he had a decent route tree for what he was asked to do at Miami. The only thing I would say in terms of his route running that really did bother me at times on film is sometimes he was a little bit deliberate going into his breaks. Like he would kind of half-ass it into the break. Now, he would explode out of the break and he'd still get open, but I'd like to see him attack the route more than what he did at the college level. But this is a guy, again, a solid route runner with that quickness and that speed. I see no reason he can't separate at the NFL level similar to what he did at the college level. Because how many guys, safeties, corners, linebackers especially, are actually going to be able to stick with this dude? The answer is not very many. So David Njoku being able to succeed at the NFL level should not come down to whether or not he can separate from defensive players, because he should be able to do that and do that consistently. And frankly, because of his length and his leaping ability, even if he's got a guy on him, let's say a team plays in a kid to leave, let's say, on him, who's really, really good at manning up against Gronkowski and some of the other tight ends in the league as a cornerback, even in that case, Njoku has such great length and leaping ability and body control that he can still create space even when there's not a lot of it anyways. Just outstanding stuff. His catch radius is great. The only thing I would say in terms of his catch radius is he does have the tendency to let the ball get into his body a little bit, which I think speaks to the fact that he's a little bit raw as a prospect still, which you would expect for a guy that's a redshirt sophomore. He's not going to be as refined as, let's say, an O.J. Howard, who had 4 years of great coaching at Alabama. Njoku's had to go through a coaching change, and sometimes that can mess with your development a little bit. But I think you've seen some progression and growth and improvement. But I would like to see him do a better job of meeting the ball with his hands away from his body. But he can catch it pretty much anywhere that's thrown in his zip code, though. I mean, we got to be fair here. And then once he gets the ball in his hands, his ability to run after the catch is outstanding. I mean, he is the best tight end with the ball in his hands in this draft class, period. You could take your Evan Ingrams or somebody else and blow it up your ass. Njoku is the best tight end in this draft class with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's got the ability to make you miss. He's got the quickness to get by you. He's got the speed to stay by you. He runs physically. He will break tackles. I mean, this dude could do it all in the open field. Just incredible stuff to watch out of a tight end. Now, sometimes that could lead to a little bit of an issue because of his great leaping ability. Like I said, he was a 7'1" high jumper in high school. He'll sometimes try to leap over guys when maybe he doesn't need to leap over them. Maybe it's a little too risky to leap over them. And sometimes it'll be great because it makes that big-time, spectacular highlight reel type of play. But I do have some concerns for a guy that had a sports hernia in 2015 about if he's going to take some unnecessary big hits because of his athleticism, it's going to lead to him wanting to do some things physically that he shouldn't have to. But in general, this guy is a special talent. When I look at him, I say he could work some on his blocking ability. He's not bad, but he could definitely get better. He just showed fight as a run blocker. He's got a good job in terms of his feel for sealing off rushers to the appropriate side. He'll just have to work on being able to anchor better at the point of attack because he can sometimes get overpowered. In terms of his hands, like I mentioned before, he does have a tendency to let the ball get into his body too much. Every once in a while, you will see a sporadic concentration focus drop, but not a ton of them. And again, in general, when you're talking about Njoku, I still felt he was a pretty reliable catcher of the football, and his ability to make some of the spectacular, big-time, awesome catches that maybe an O.J. Howard couldn't helps his grade in the hands department than maybe it would more so other guys. In terms of his final overall grade, whereas I had O.J. Howard as a 91.0, I've got David Njoku as a 92.0. Like I said, not a huge difference here, but there is a little bit of a difference. Now, sure, in theory, you might look at O.J. Howard and view him as a more complete all-around player. And maybe that's not an inaccurate assessment. But in terms of what Njoku does and how well he does it, and you think about the upside and the potential for growth and improvement in those weakness opportunity areas, I mean, the sky's the limit for this dude. This dude has all world potential at the tight end position, and that's what makes him the number one tight end for me in this draft class. In terms of an NFL comparison, maybe guys like Martellus Bennett, Travis Kelce, athletic dudes with the physical package to do everything. Some might sit there and point to, because of the speed and quickness, they might point to an Eric Ebron, but Njoku does so many things more than an Eric Ebron did. In terms of this guy, though, I would be stunned if he doesn't make the Pro Bowl in 2 or 3 years. I'd be absolutely floored if he didn't, because it either means he got hurt or there was something unforeseen that I just couldn't envision. But everything about this dude screams out to me star in the making. And in terms of his draft range, I think his draft range could start as high as the 10th pick with Buffalo. It could be number 12 with Cleveland. It could be 13 with Arizona. Just like OJ Howard, I think with Njoku, especially with Njoku, if he's not taken by the top 20 picks, teams are stupid. There is no way you can tell me there are 20 players in this draft better than David Njoku. Frankly, when all is said and done in terms of my grading, I don't know if there's going to be 12 or 13 players better than David Njoku. I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if he goes to the combine and he absolutely destroys it and blows it the fuck up, and he becomes the clear-cut number one tight end in this draft, that more teams fall in love with him than they do OJ Howard, and Njoku takes his rightful place as the number one tight end drafted in 2017. The dude is good. The dude is special. And if you don't believe me, just pop in some of the film and you should be able to see it for yourself.